Hey everyone, ever wonder how long it takes to build a car from scratch, or what parts actually go into it? What you're seeing now is the painted car body arriving at final assembly. The first step? Scanning a barcode on the crossbeam. That little code holds all the details about this car's configuration. After the scan, a spec sheet and 2 barcode stickers are printed. The sheet gets slapped on the hood, and the stickers go right above it. Next, the hood gets opened up using a support fixture and locked in place. A travel card is grabbed and 1 barcode sticker is placed on it. After removing the strap from the driver's side door, the travel card goes inside the car. The second barcode is stuck on the left door. Only after double-checking it matches the chassis number. Now on the passenger side, the door strap is removed too. Any grease on the trunk lid is wiped off to prep it for the rear badges. Then it's time to grab 2 trunk springs and a hydraulic strut. First, the springs go in. If they feel too soft, there's an extra mounting hole for more tension. Then the strut gets installed. It makes opening and closing the trunk smoother. Rubber plugs get pushed into 5 holes under the trunk lid. These are for draining leftover coating fluid after painting. What you're looking at now is the Jetta badge. It uses imported 3M adhesive, which works best around 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So the badge is warmed up in a heater box first. Once it's ready, the trunk is set at the right angle with a support stand. On the left goes the FAW Volkswagen badge. Then the protective film is peeled off. On the right, Sagitar is placed up top and 300 TSI underneath. A roller tool presses everything down for better grip. Now the support stand is swapped out and a new tool helps install the BW badge. After peeling off the backing, it's stuck on and pressed down again with the roller to lock it in place. Up front, sound dampening insulation gets added inside the hood. Clips are pressed into place so it stays tight. This helps cut down engine noise getting into the cabin. Then 2 rubber bumpers go onto the hood. These help adjust the panel gaps between the hood and engine bay. A water channel sound pad also gets stuck inside the groove after peeling the backing. A torque-controlled electric wrench is used next. Another piece of sound insulation is pushed into a hole inside the A-pillar. Then 2 hinge-limiting bolts on the front doors get loosened. Same thing happens for the rear doors too. The door latch on the frame is removed. Protective pads go on the hinges before the doors are taken off. Each one is moved onto a rolling cart. Once it's locked in, the pads are removed. Rear doors follow the same steps and are sent to another line for extra parts installation. Now we grab 4 rivets and a rivet gun. These get punched into the trunk's process holes. And no, rivets aren't just for cutting costs, they serve a specific purpose here. Next up are the door frame weather seals. They're installed starting from the corners, pressed along the edge. Inside the seals are metal clips that need to snap into the flange. You've got to make sure there are no gaps or lifted edges. The same thing happens with the back door frames. These weather strips keep water out and help reduce road noise. Whatever you do, don't pull them off or mess with them. Now we bring in a barcode scanner and some dashboard pins. After scanning, the pins get installed into the dashboard bracket and tightened down using an Atlas electric gun. Next, we install front and rear door latches. 4 screws total. These get mounted on the B-pillars and tightened with the same electric tool. Watch closely. On each side, the first screw is only snugged up, not fully tightened. There's a reason for that. Under the seats, a rubber bushing gets tapped in with a mallet. Then the trunk latch is installed. The bolts follow a sequence. First one snug, then the second is locked, then back to tighten the first. Now for the transmission mount. We grab the mount, a seal strip, and 4 bolts. The bolts go into the mount, then the whole thing gets secured to the left frame rail. With the seal strip fitted to the hood, each bolt is hand-tightened 3 turns before locking it down. To wrap up the door seals, a pneumatic roller gun is used. It presses the embedded metal strip into place. This tool runs about $1,000. No regular shop's gonna have one lying around. Next, we grab the hood seal and the AC intake screen plus 4 screws. The screen gets mounted inside the water channel. The hood seal goes on the passenger side, then gets tightened with the power wrench. When you switch to recirculated air, this is where it flows before hitting the cabin filter. Also helps block bugs and mice. Then comes the trunk weather strip. It's threaded through the lid, adjusted, and clipped into the lip with a built-in metal core. If it's loose, water sneaks in. And it won't block road noise either. Now a robot arm rolls up. It grabs the Atlas Easy electric gun, scans the config sheet, and tightens the 4 bolts on the transmission mount in a crisscross pattern for even pressure. Later, this mount will lock into a big bracket on the frame. Once that's done, the robot rolls off, 2 more sound pads go into the water channel, and a rubber plug is pressed into a firewall hole. Next, the shark fin antenna is dropped through the roof and bolted down with the electric wrench. Big step, the sunroof seal, one solid piece, no breaks or gaps. It's carefully pressed around the sunroof opening. After that, the backing is peeled and a roller goes over it twice. This seal uses imported 3M adhesive. If done right, it stays put. Next, 4 vibration damping pads go on using an electric roller. The trunk seal is firmly pressed in. 1 pad per rear wheel well, another near the rear inner wall, same for both sides. These help cut noise from rear wheel vibrations. Now we see the VIN engraving machine in action. It clamps to the frame, scans the config sheet, and etches the VIN, the car's fingerprint. That number tells you where and when it was built and who built it. One of a kind. Can't be changed. While that's going on, the front hood latch is installed with a power wrench. Once the engraving's done, the machine backs off. Metal shavings get brushed away. A transfer paper goes on, gets rubbed to pick up the VIN, and then peeled off. That paper gets sealed in plastic and attached to the car. It'll be needed for registration. To protect against rust, waterproof tape goes over the VIN. Last step, the fuel line is pushed through a hole on the right side of the frame. A rubber mallet helps tap it in nice and snug. First, we grab the hood latch cable and the expansion nut for the hand grip. The nut goes into the mounting hole and the cable feeds through a hole in the firewall. It runs inside the left frame rail, then comes out the other end. A rubber grommet on the cable snaps into the firewall to seal it up. Next, we pick up the power torque wrench, the sunroof drain clips, and the drain hose. The nuts holding the airbag control module come off first. Then the drain hose goes into place. 2 clips get installed on the A-pillar, and the hose locks into them. 3 more clips go on the left C-pillar, and the right side is done the same way. After the rear seat base is in, the rear drain hose slides through the C-pillar and locks in place. On the right side, a wave limiter gets added before the hose. The airbag control module goes back on with 3 nuts tightened by an Atlas electronic wrench. This module processes crash signals, decides if the airbags deploy, and stores vehicle data before impact. We grab the scanner and the soundproof curtain, scan the code into the system, then tuck the curtain inside the frame rail. Both sides get one. The rear hatch lock and trim cover come next. The lock bolts to the hatch, the Atlas wrench tightens 2 bolts, and the cover snaps on. A heat-insulating pad for the front compartment gets clipped above the firewall. It blocks heat and noise. The side curtain airbag bracket and 2 screws are prepped. The hood support bracket comes off, and the hood closes to make room for the sunroof install. The side curtain bracket mounts to the C-pillar, screws snugged but not final tight. The robotic arm lifts the panoramic sunroof, sets it on the install tray, then slides it into the cabin. Once seated on the roof, screws are tightened on both sides. 16 in total hold it in place. Years ago, some sunroof leaks were caused by loose drain connections. But the new hose material prevents that. What you see here is the updated hose. The front compartment soundproof pad hangs in place, and the wiring harness base is mounted. The dashboard harness gets passed through the firewall and into the cabin, the grommet sealing it. A relay gets mounted on the body pillar. Then headlight harnesses are laid along the frame rail. A sealing grommet on the frame takes the left front ABS harness, routed to the wheel well. The right side harness follows the same process, with the dashboard harness passed through the firewall and grommeted. Four expansion nuts go into the rear right pillar. Another soundproof pad goes on the firewall, and insulation, clips, and foot pedal brackets are fitted around the dash harness. Two ground wires get secured to the frame. A wave limiter is installed on the left C-pillar. And the relay box bracket is mounted. The brake booster and master cylinder assembly get scanned into the system, installed through the firewall and plugged in. Another wave limiter is mounted to the right C-pillar. Armrest brackets are tightened down. They hold firm even under heavy pulling. A signal amplifier gets mounted. Primer is applied to the triangle window frame and rear windshield frame for better glass bonding. And the vehicle control unit is connected and installed. The yellow drain hose connects, the left armrest bracket tightens, and the left signal amplifier screw is secured. The brake and accelerator pedals are mounted on the booster bracket. The plastic accelerator pedals are designed to brake in a crash to prevent injury. On the C-pillar, rivets secure the water deflector strip bracket. Side crash sensors mount beside the seats. Windshield washer nozzles and the antenna are wired and mounted. The rear hatch lock gets a pull cord for easy opening, and panel gaps are checked. This one is perfect. Finally, the technician stamps their seal and writes down the torque value. The dashboard assembly is brought in with a robotic arm, protected with a non-scratch pad, and slid through the door opening for installation. The robotic arm swings into place, lining up the dashboard with the car body. Once it's in position, a nut is threaded onto the dashboard bracket. An electronic wrench locks it down tight. Both sides are secured before the arm pulls away. A wiring pack is opened, and the clips on the harness snap into the guide holes along the A-pillar. USB and sunroof control wires are clipped into the holes running across the front roof frame. The side curtain airbag wires and rear reading light cables are fed through the sunroof drain tube, then clipped into the roof's guide holes. Another wiring pack is opened to prep for the next steps. Now, the dashboard assembly is fully joined to the body. A deflector is fitted over the air conditioning intake. Sitting neatly on the water channel, the right side harness clips lock into the body. On the left, the headlight harness is routed along the side rail with unused wiring tucked inside for later. The harness is clipped into the water channel openings. Same for the right headlight wiring. Next comes the water chamber cover and its brackets. The cover is mounted over the channel, and two brackets are fixed to the brake booster. A powered torque wrench secures the screws on both sides. Above the driver's seat, wiring is clipped into the roof guide holes. The vanity light harness is routed through one guide hole, pulled out from another, and clipped in place. Under the left side of the dashboard, another wiring pack is opened. The wires are straightened, clipped into guide holes along the A-pillar and the door sill, and the door harness connector is plugged in. Once clipped, the harness to the front engine bay is connected to the fuse box under the dash. Another set of connectors is clipped into body openings and matched by color. The right side harness is installed the same way, except it skips the fuse box connection. Clips secure the wiring along the right side sill. The seatbelt pretensioner wire is clipped near the seat. Rear door wiring is fitted along the B-pillar, clipped to keep it neat. More clips are added as the wiring is straightened. From the rear seat latch area, the trunk harness is fed into the trunk, secured in the guide holes, then connected to the signal amplifier and signal modulator. The rear seatbelt tensioner wiring is clipped in, followed by the collision sensor connection. The keyless entry module harness is clipped under the rear seat, plugged in, then connected to the shark fin antenna. Clips secure it along the underside of the car. Oil stains on the fender are wiped clean. A side emblem tool is set in place, the emblem's protective film and backing removed, and the emblem pressed onto the fender. The side marker light harness is plugged in, then the tool rolls over the emblem 3 times for a firm bond before being removed. An electronic driver tightens the bolts between the dashboard and the body, then the bolts between the dashboard and the central channel. A rubber grommet and clip are fitted to the sunroof drain hose, which is routed to the drain hole under the wheel arch and clipped in place. Another wiring pack is opened, and the rear USB wiring is clipped to a guidepost under the central channel. A grommet is fitted to the left rear wheel arch. The taillight harness is routed through the parcel shelf and into the trunk, clipped into the body openings, passed through the tail light opening, fitted with a grommet for waterproofing and secured with clips. The signal amplifier and signal modulator are plugged in and clipped. This harness powers the high mount brake light and the trunk light. At the back, sound insulation is tucked above the wheel arches. Ground wires are installed on the right sill by removing the nuts, looping the wires onto the studs, and tightening them. The air conditioning drain hose is inserted into the dash opening. The airbag controller is plugged in, then the harness is clipped and grommeted for sealing. The fuel door lock wiring is routed through the guide hole and fixed in place. The right taillight wiring is installed the same way as the left. The rear bumper OCU wiring is routed through the trunk opening, grommeted for waterproofing, clipped in place and set aside for later installation. The ESP bracket is next. The wiring is clipped under the seat, the barcode is scanned into the system, and the bracket is bolted to the body. Grommets and brackets are installed in both rear wheel arch openings. An Atlas electronic driver tightens 3 bolts on the ESP bracket. Side curtain airbags are scanned, fitted, and clipped into the body openings. The rain wiper motor is scanned, mounted to the water channel, plugged in, and secured with 3 bolts. Passenger side reading light and vanity light wiring is clipped in. The sunroof switch harness is clipped and plugged in. The ESP unit is mounted on a base, scanned and tightened with 2 screws. Brake lines have their dust caps removed, then are connected to the ESP and master cylinder, each tightened with screws. All grounding wires across the body are secured. Left frame rail, driver sill, rear shelf, right frame rail, engine mount bracket, and passenger sill. The power cable is connected, positive to the relay and negative to the wiper motor. The MFT device plugs into the diagnostic port, scans the setup code, and runs the first electrical check. The raft, breakout cysts, bars, canopies, fences, and a lighter are scanned with the diagnostic port, scans the setup code, and runs the first electrical check. Anti-theft components are downloaded and hardware is initialized. Side curtain airbag clips are locked to the A pillar, and the wiring clips into the C pillar openings. A cordless driver secures the inflator bolts, the harness plug is connected, and the side curtain bracket is tightened with 2 screws. The side curtain airbag is mounted to its bracket, and the rear lid harness is set across the parcel shelf. From here, it's routed into the trunk, clipped along the support rod into the holes. This harness carries the lines for taillights, license plate lamps, trunk lock, and trunk handle. The lock connector is plugged in, while the lamp and handle wires are pulled through for later. A barcode is scanned into the system. The air conditioning unit is bolted to the firewall with an electronic torque wrench. A brake line connects between the stability system and the master cylinder, clipped to 2 brackets. A high-end torque gun worth over $27,000 secures the bolts on both ends. Any shop mechanic would dream of such a tool. Next, the brake lines for the left rear and front are prepared. A pressure line bracket is fixed to the right frame and clipped in. The covers are removed. The rear line is mounted to the stability unit, clipped, and routed to the wheel. The front line is fed through the wheel housing, clipped and set to link to the caliper. Both ends connect back at the stability unit. The right side lines are done the same way. Baker bracket keeps them clear of contact. The wiring connector is plugged in, and the speed sensor cable is fixed. The harness is laid along the hinge for later. Another barcode is scanned. Above the firewall, a clip is added for the oxygen sensor and heat shield. Another bracket holds the brake lines, and all 4 bolts on the stability unit are tightened. This system later keeps the car stable. When it senses a skid, it adjusts engine power and brake pressure automatically. After the first electrical test, the cable is removed. The MFT device is placed back on the rack for reuse. Vehicle identification stickers are applied on the windshield, under the hood, on the right A-pillar, in the trunk channel, and inside the rear lid. Next comes the sound insulation, reading lights, and the rear belts come next. The belt is mounted to the parcel shelf, the insulation pressed into its slots. A roof bracket is added to the child lock. The headliner is scanned into the system and 2 workers lifted in through the windshield. Connectors for USB, vanity lamps, sunshade, and controller are pulled through. Clips are snapped into the roof frame. The rear reading lamp is wired and locked in. The other side is done the same. Around the sunroof, every clip is pressed in. Now the air conditioning high pressure line is installed after its cap is removed. The low pressure line follows, then the copper pipe is connected between them and its nuts tightened. The assembly is removed, the copper pipe attached to the unit and the lines clipped to brackets on the frame. The harness is plugged in. The rear foot air duct is fitted, linking the dashboard vent to the seat frame. A height adjuster, nut, bolts, and belt are prepared. The adjuster is fixed to the pillar, the retractor bolted in, and the belt end secured. A torque gun tightens the top bolt. The other side is done the same way. Screws, a ground cable, and a shield are readied. The shield mounts over the stability unit, copper pipe bolts are tightened, and a firewall heat pad is clipped on. The high-pressure pipe is hung to avoid damage. The ground cable is fixed on its stud and tightened. The belt guide bracket is set with a bolt. 2 license plate lights and center belt are prepared. The belt routes through the shelf, the retractor bolted, and the guide bracket clipped. The trunk lid is lowered, lamp connectors plugged, and both lights snapped in. The guide bolt is secured. Roof handles, a front belt guide, and vanity lights are installed. The belt runs into its guide, clipped to the pillar. The lamp plugged and pressed into the headliner. Handles snap in and lock. The door seal is lifted, the headliner edge pressed inside, and the rear armrest is added the same way. A sun visor and pillar trim are installed. The trim is scanned, visor wiring connected to its sensor, wrapped and tucked in. The visor is mounted and clipped. The tweeter harness is wrapped. The pillar trim pressed into place. Barcodes on the body and belts are scanned. Retractors are bolted, harnesses plugged, and all bolts tightened. A sponge pad is placed on the parcel shelf trim before pressing it on, with no wrinkles or misalignment. The trunk lamp harness is clipped, padded, pulled through, and connected to the lamp before it's mounted. 3 bolts and the engine mount are taken. 2 are threaded, the mount set on the right frame, and the last bolt connects to the body. They're turned in, later tightened, followed by 6 bolts for the firewall insulation. Finally, the dome light assembly is unpacked, the microphone snaps into its slot, the connector is plugged, and the light is locked into place. First, the plug for the sunroof controller is connected to the microphone wiring harness. The harness is clipped into the slot on the interior light assembly. Then, the light is mounted to the roofliner and snapped into place. Next, the rear seat wiring harness is routed through an opening, making the next steps easier. The rear seat belt harness is plugged in. After that, the rear hatch handle and its bracket are installed. The harness is secured on the bracket, pulled through the opening, and plugged into the handle. This handle also carries the backup camera, so the camera harness is connected here as well. The wiring is clipped to the bracket inside the hatch to prevent any rattles against the panel. The rear seat belt buckle is placed over a stud, ready for tightening later. A barcode is scanned into the system. An electronic torque gun tightens the engine mount bolts. This mount is what later holds the engine to the body. It also absorbs vibration during operation. Now, notice the thin sheet metal under it. That is designed for engine drop protection. In a frontal crash, the engine tilts down a few inches and locks against the subframe. That way it does not push into the cabin, reducing the risk of injury to passengers. Next, rubber pads are placed in the mounting holes on both sides of the rear body. The main tail lamps are unwrapped, plugged in, and installed. The opposite side is done the same way. Then the smaller tail lamps on the hatch are mounted and connected. The B-pillar trim comes next. A code is scanned from the trim. The lower panel is clipped into place. Then the weather stripping is pressed in with a special tool. The seatbelt is routed through the upper panel, which is also clipped in. A screw is tightened with a powered torque wrench. A cover-marked airbag is added, and the seatbelt pre-tensioner is bolted in. After that, an insulation pad is installed under the driver's dashboard with a torque tool. The headlight switch wiring is routed through the lower panel and clipped in. The pad is secured to the bottom of the dash. 3 screws lock the lower panel, plus 2 more on the side. The small interior lamp is inspected, plugged in, and installed. The headlight switch is plugged in, clipped into place, and secured. Back at the rear, the smaller hatch lamps are locked with screws. The main tail lamps are also tightened with 2 screws each. Later, they will be adjusted for final alignment. Now we move to the triangular windows. Robots pick them up and run them under an automatic glue applicator. A precise bead is laid down around the edges, making sure thickness is even and no gaps appear. The glass is then aligned to locating pins on the body and pressed into place. This small glass is actually the most expensive, not because of production cost, but because there are fewer suppliers. Next, the windshield. A robot runs a bead of adhesive all around the edge. Another machine picks it up, rotates it, and moves it into position. A capsule is placed on the A-pillars. Then the glass is lowered, pressed firmly, and clipped at the bottom to lock it in place. The rear windshield is installed the same way. The rear seat belt buckle is bolted down. Expansion nuts are installed on the rear quarter panels to prepare for the bumper bracket. More expansion nuts go under the tail lamps. The hood is propped open with a support. The seat belt pre-tensioner is tightened with an electronic torque gun. Then the seat belt bolts and buckles are secured. Another bolt on the pre-tensioner is tightened, and the harness is plugged in. The front bumper bracket is installed next. Expansion nuts are fitted into the fender and inner wheel housing. The bracket is mounted on studs and tightened with a torque wrench. A special tool removes the vehicle identification plate. Rubber plugs are pressed into the side panels to block water entry. An exhaust heat shield is mounted at the rear and fixed with semi-round nuts. The fuel line is clipped into its bracket. Then the bracket is secured to the underbody. The entire chassis assembly is moved under the body on a large pallet. Equipment lifts it up and bolts it to the body. Then the rear axle fasteners are installed. The tightening gun automatically moves from one side to the other, securing both sides. Next, 2 engine mounting bolts are pre-tightened with a torque tool, and later equipment will fully tighten them. Expansion nuts are added to the rear wheel housings. The main suspension bolts are fitted and snugged down, including axle seat bolts and rear link bolts. The front suspension bolts are installed after aligning the threads with a jig. Transmission bolts are snugged down with a powered gun. And the engine mount bolts are pre-tightened on the right side. Machines then step in to torque all these bolts automatically, using a crisscross pattern for accuracy. At the same time, another device mounts the center tunnel heat shield, while yet another one secures the subframe bolts and brackets. The car body moves into the next station. Outside, this machine tightens the 2 rear slide bolts that were flagged earlier, and the unit below secures 4 rear axle bolts. Another tool locks down 4 middle crossmember bolts, along with 4 bolts for the rear crossmember. Now, a KUKA robot is fastening the 2 engine mount bolts. Next, another machine tightens 4 fuel tank bolts, followed by 1 bolt on the rear muffler. Finally, 2 KUKA robots work together to tighten 3 bolts on each side of the front suspension. Workers then pick up 2 different expansion nuts. One goes on the inside of the rear body panel, the other into the wheel well. 2 more bolts are taken, and an electric torque wrench pre-tightens the fuel tank neck bolts. To finish, an Atlas electronic wrench secures both bolts. 2 dust caps are added on the left and right front suspension bolts, and the fuel line is clipped into its bracket. At this point, the chassis support tray separates and the body is fully joined to the chassis. The engine oil level sensor plug is connected, the dust cap on the brake line is removed, and 2 brake lines are attached and tightened with screws. A special tool installs a half-round nut to fix the muffler heat shield. Next, a set of embedded nuts, 2 anchors, and the rear axle guard plate are installed. The nuts and seals go into the service holes, the guard plate is mounted under the rear axle, and the anchors lock it in place. The ABS wiring is pulled through a service hole, its clips are tapped in with a rubber mallet. And finally, the ABS and wheel speed sensor plugs are connected. 4 anchors and a central tunnel shield are mounted under the catalytic converter. Another tool secures them tight. And 4 more screws lock down the rear axle guard plate. On each side, 2 screws hold it in place. 3 bolts connect the engine to the transmission, tightened with an electronic wrench, since these bolts are at the very bottom and cannot be fastened earlier. A dedicated electronic wrench for brake lines is then used to tighten the connection bolts. This tool alone costs more than a Jetta. After that, the dust cap on the fuel line is removed, and the engine fuel pipe is connected to the tank pipe. A large underbody shield is then mounted with 7 screws, one on each side of the car. A smaller shield is added at the back. Moving to the front wheels, dust caps are removed from the brake lines and sensor plugs. The wiring harness clips are fixed into the service holes, the plugs are reconnected, and a bracket is installed to secure the brake lines. That same dedicated wrench tightens the connections. Ground wires are also handled here. The nut on the left side frame rail is removed, the transmission ground wire is installed, and the nut is put back on to be tightened at the next station. The charcoal canister is unpacked, scanned into the system, and installed near the right rear wheel, with its fuel pipes connected and one screw tightened. Next, the air conditioning compressor is prepped. Its 2 bolts and dust caps are removed. Then the low pressure pipe is mounted on the right side and the high pressure pipe on the left. Both are secured with bolts using a power torque wrench. At the rear, the bumper guide bracket and the antenna for keyless entry are installed, followed by the rear crash beam. Wiring is organized, the antenna is plugged in, and 2 bolts are pre-tightened with a wrench. Later, more bolts will be added and tightened with the electronic tool. The particulate filter pressure sensor is plugged in, the vacuum booster dust cap is removed, and the vacuum pipe is sprayed and connected. Clips are tapped in to hold the wiring in place. The transmission vent pipe is also installed, while the starter and alternator wiring is clipped and secured neatly along the engine bay. At this point, the heater hoses are connected to the engine after removing the dust caps. The fuel pump controller and tank sensor cover are installed and wired. A coolant reservoir is mounted, its hoses are connected with spring clips. Finally, the OCU antenna is fixed on the rear crash beam with a nut. The wiring is clipped and the beam bolts are tightened, 3 on the left and 4 on the right. That extra bolt on the right is not about saving money, it is because the right side also supports the tow hook. The technicians connect the transmission harness and lock it to the side frame. Next, they organize the steering rack wiring, secure it to the body, and lock the plugs in place. The ground wire is mounted, clips snapped into the process holes, and the positive and alternator harnesses fixed to the fuse box. Then the ground nut is tightened with the electric tool. They prepare the battery tray, install the bracket, and carry it over to the vehicle. After tightening the 3 bolts and the side nut, the steering rack, ground wire, vent tube, and engine harness are attached. Following that, the control module and transmission controller are connected, with the plug locked onto the frame. The intake hose is installed with a spring clamp, making sure it seats correctly. Both oxygen sensors are connected, their wiring secured to the firewall, and the battery management harness is plugged in. After scanning the barcodes for the battery data, the battery is placed on the tray and secured with the bracket and pressure plate. Then the purge pump is installed on the side frame. The fuel lines and one-way valve hose attached, and the pump harness connected. Next, the washer reservoir is mounted, the plugs connected, and the wiring routed for upcoming steps. The transmission harness slides into its bracket and is connected. The positive cable cover is installed, the cable mounted on the battery and fuse box, and all nuts tightened with the power tool. When the front end arrives from the sub-assembly line, it is lifted into place. The configuration sheet scanned and mounted to the side frame. The crash sensor and fan harness are connected, 6 bolts pre-tightened, and the final torque applied with the Atlas tool. All torque data is uploaded to the company system. The exterior temperature sensor is mounted. The steering column joint connected. and the ABS harness plug locked into the floor. The headlamp brackets are installed, followed by the hood release cable and both headlamps, with screws pre-tightened for later aiming. Rear bumper brackets are installed, expansion nuts secured, and the alignment tool used to set the correct tailgate gap. The fuel door is assembled, the label added, the electronic lock mounted, the drain tube routed, and the full fuel door assembly installed. The washer reservoir is placed on the front end, the pressure vent mounted under the trunk, and the millimeter wave radar for higher trims installed and connected. The air conditioning lines are tightened and the additional coolant pump hose attached. The horn is mounted, the harness secured, and the hinge plate, bracket, and air guide panel installed. Foam is applied to the front crash beam. Since the tailgate handle is not ready, the tailgate is opened from the inside to prepare for bumper installation. The rear bumper is brought in, the hands-free trunk sensor connected, and the bumper snapped into place before moving to the left side. The carpet is installed, coolant hoses connected, and a rubber buffer fitted on the hood. The front bumper is mounted, the radar plug connected, and everything locked in with clips and one bolt. The radar and Volkswagen badge are installed on the grille. The grille snapped into position and secured with 4 screws. Wheel well insulation and front liners are added, with screws tightened inside and outside the fenders. The rear underbody shield is secured, the parking sensor connected, and nuts and screws tightened. The mudguard is added. The bumper fixed to the fender and the rear wheel well liner installed, while the remaining screws in both front wells are completed. The engine underbody shield is mounted, bolts tightened, clips added, and the lower bumper secured. Remaining screws are tightened, ensuring the resin shield protects the engine and performs correctly in a collision. Finally, the last screws in the rear wheel wells are tightened. This concludes today's video. Follow to see the next steps in the Volkswagen Jetta assembly.